Hey, what's up, guys? This is Mark back with another fantasy football video. So now we're getting into week 4, and in this video, what I'm going to do is talk about the streams and waiver wire pickups that I like for this week. I'm going to go into my 6 treats, guys, that I like that you pick up on waivers that can help you the rest of the season, and then 6 tricks that I think are players that you want to watch out for who could look good on paper to be somebody to add to your roster, but people I would not recommend a top waiver priority on. Maybe justify adding them just as a stream, but I wouldn't waste your top waiver selection on them. So yeah, so let's get into it. And first of all, like if you started out 0-3, like don't worry, you still got a long season ahead of you. Still a lot of time to get things turned around, but you're going to have to really start making some moves to catch up. But then again, like a lot of people have come back from 0-4, 0-5, make the playoffs. So maybe even 0-6 too, depending on like how much like parity there is in your league. But it's definitely possible, so don't give up. And I'm telling you, like this week, there are a lot of potential like game-changing moves that you can make that could really help you, especially in the waiver wires. So let's get into that. And first of all, it starts with the question of the day, which will also kind of lead into my favorite pickup for this week. And that is, what do you do with Saquon Barkley and the New York Giants? So, first, if you hadn't heard the news, like Saquon Barkley, who's pretty much consistently like known as the best player in fantasy football, pretty much #1 draft pick universally. So he has a high ankle sprain. He's expected to miss the next 4 to 8 weeks. So what do you do with him? This is a question that a fan named Claudio asked on my previous video, and it's a good topic of discussion. So I think in an ideal world you would want to hold Saquon Barkley because he is like the best talent in fantasy football, but then again, like there's a chance he doesn't actually play until mid-November if you're going like 8 weeks in advance. So that's a lot of time that you potentially miss. So it really, to me, it's not a factor of like talent or situation of the team. I mean, if anything, his outlook looks a little better now with Daniel Jones if he was healthy. But the thing is like what I dictate of whether or not you hold on to Saquon or not is your record right now. So if you're a team that's like 1-2 or 0-3, like you need to start getting victories. So try to see if you could trade Saquon Barkley to get guys that can help you right now, because it doesn't really do you any good to hold on to a guy that isn't going to play for the next 8 weeks potentially, because those are the weeks that you're trying to catch up. So it doesn't make sense. So you want to like get guys that you can have produce for you now, not somebody long term. But then oppositely, like if you're 3-0, like what you could do is like make a trade for Saquon Barkley. Could be a good fantasy asset for you. So their first couple. What's their schedule like when they come back? The first couple games, it's a pretty difficult schedule. I don't remember the exact order, but they've got the Bears in there around when he comes back, the Eagles in there, and then the Rams in there. So those are all like pretty tough defenses. But then week 15 and 16, which are pretty much like in most fantasy formats, like either the quarterfinal or the final, semifinal or the final. Like they're playing the Miami Dolphins week 15, and they're playing the Washington Redskins week 16. Like, that is absolute gold right there. Like, if he is healthy by that point and the Giants are still somewhat competitive, which, they actually look like they could be potentially. That division's kind of wide open after the Cowboys. So, excellent opportunity for you. He's a great guy that you can go ahead and buy right now. So, in one of my leagues, like, I made a team. I made like 2 teams, a standard league team and a PPR league team, so I can kind of track them and kind of let you guys know what's going on with them. So in one of them, my standard league team, I am short on running backs. My best running back is Philip Lindsay. So I actually made a trade to offer to the Saquon owner Philip Lindsay for Saquon Barkley. And the reason I did that is that, like, yes, Philip Lindsay had a really good game, but like I'm concerned about his long-term outlook, as I said in the video that I just posted, because I think that there's potential that he had a really good game, but Royce Freeman, because he's still splitting touches with him, could actually have some of those games as well, and Philip Lindsay might have dud games. So trying to see like if he might be interested in that. Philip Lindsay could actually be pretty useful to him now, as where Saquon, he's just sitting on him for a while, but we'll see what actually becomes that trade offer. So Yeah, but big question. But I think Claudio, it's really going to depend on your record. Like if you have a good record, hold him or try to buy him. Just be judicial of who you're giving up, and then. But if you're in a losing, you got a losing record right now, especially if you're 0-3. Just try to see if you can trade Saquon away. Somebody will want him. You can definitely get value out of that. So 5 treats, 5 tricks. I know it's not Halloween. We still got another month to go. But like, I like this because it tells me the guys that like are gonna, hopefully like these are ones that like I like as long-term outlook to help your roster. The tricks are one I think these games are more just flash in the pan, or they could actually help you for next week, but they're more of a stream. So my number 1 treat, and this again goes back to the big news of Saquon Barkley, Wayne Gallman. So Wayne Gallman, didn't do anything special in this game. He had 5 receptions for 13 yards, didn't catch a pass, but he did get a target. But remember week 1 against the Cowboys, like they were using him on that drive with Daniel Jones, and Gallman was like, he was like carrying the team down the field. So I think that like, yes, they're playing Tampa Bay, but actually Tampa Bay's got the number 1 rush defense right now. So like a much better like defensive unit on stopping the run. So I think next week, like when these guys are playing the Washington Redskins, which are just, I don't know if you watched the game from last night, but like it was so bad. So like I like the Giants to all go off in this game, especially Wayne Gallman. Like this team only has one other running back, and he's a converted fullback right now. I think Wayne Gallman is going to absolutely like feast on this Redskins team. So you have to, if this guy's on your waiver, like you have to make this your number 1 priority because he's going to get like Saquon Barkley level volume, even though he's not near as productive as him. But like anytime you get an opportunity to have a guy that you just peg in as a clear RB1, you take it, and that becomes your obvious number 1 waiver priority. Another guy that I like as my second treat is very similar to this, and it's Tony Pollard. So, because if anything were to happen to Zeke Elliott, this guy proved in this game against the Dolphins that he is ready to step up. 13 carries, 103 yards. That's almost 8 yards a carry. He got a touchdown. He also had 3 receptions for 25 yards, so he's proven that he can actually be a pass-catching running back as well. So, especially if you own Zeke Elliott, like, you want Tony Pollard on your team. And, like, even if you don't have Zeke, like, this is a guy that you can handcuff on your bench. Maybe even when they're in these games, like, when they're playing teams like the Jets or, like, the Washington Redskins, where they're going to be up by a lot, they might just give the ball more to Tony Pollard to, like, run down the game. Like, this guy could actually be a lot of value for you. Or you could even try to trade him to the Zeke Elliott owner, and you can get value out of that. So that's why Tony Pollard is somebody that, like, I really like, even if he doesn't actually give you any points anytime soon, just because of how much handcuff value he has. Another handcuff running back right now who could actually get another good opportunity this week is Darrell Williams. So, as I talked about, like, a lot of people were thinking that Darwin Thompson was going to take over the Chiefs' backfield, kind of be that like with Damian Williams injured and Sean McCoy banged up. But in reality, it was Darrell Williams who's the more experienced player. He had a good stat line as well. He had 9 carries, 62 yards, including a 41-yard rush. And then he had 5 receptions for 47 yards. So he's another guy that's like, kind of under the radar, but like a good pass-catching running back as well. So that'll be helpful if you're in a PPR league. But like, what is this team's health going to look like going into the Lions game? Which, like, the Lions are not a good run defense, unlike the Ravens, which are. So if the Chiefs are in a position where they decide to sit LaShawn McCoy and Damian Williams misses another game, then great opportunity for Darrell Williams to explode. But I think that you have to try to pick him up anyway because there's a lot of handcuff value there for McCoy and Damian Williams. So again, like, great. I like that performance, and I think that will only be better against the Lions because the Ravens' run defense, that is their strength. So other treats I like. Dionte Johnson. So Dionte Johnson, I talked about him from the Pittsburgh preview that I did a couple months ago. This is a guy they got in the 3rd round. He's a guy that they think highly of. Remember, that was about where they got Antonio Brown back when he was drafted by the Steelers. He's being groomed as the wide receiver 2 heir apparent to fill the position. And I think this guy is now already emerging as that second wide receiver. He was second on the team in targets to Juju. Like he had 3 catches, 52 yards, and touchdown, but 6 targets. That was second on the team, as I already said. So, like, they're getting this guy more involved, and his volume is increasing every week. And especially you have guys like Moncrief who just look like trash. So, like, I think that, like, they're playing the Bengals this week, which is not a very good defense. I think that the Steelers will have a good opportunity to, put up better offensive numbers than they have in the first couple games. And I think Dionte Johnson could really benefit from that. Kind of a guy flying under the radar and a good pickup option for you. So Dionte Johnson is trying to fill that wide receiver 2 void. But a guy that I really like who is trying to fill a wide receiver 1 void with T.Y. Hilton injury is Paris Campbell. This is another guy. He's a rookie. They drafted pretty high in the draft this year. Didn't have a great game against the Falcons this week. He had 3 catches, 24 yards, and off 3 targets. But I think that there's still a ton of opportunity for him moving forward. And I don't know who's going to step up into this number 1 receiver role for the Colts, but this is a guy that I think has a good opportunity to be that guy for the Colts because they obviously had confidence in him taking that high. They have him involved to a good degree in the offense. I think he's a solid pickup, and I think that this is a guy that's ultimately is going to stand out among the receivers on the Colts as the one moving forward if Hilton has to miss a lot of time. And then Preston Williams is my last treat, and higher priority if you're in PPR compared to standard, but Preston Williams is emerging as their clear number 1 receiver. He had a game that, like, you just look at the stats, 4 catches, 68 yards, not a lot, but he had 12 targets. Like, this guy, the only problem is that, like, they're not getting him the ball, actually, but then again, it's kind of hard to when you're on that team. But I think that will improve as the games go by. Miami plays the Chargers this week, so they're going to be behind again, trying to play catch up. Preston Williams, he's standing out among this receiving core, and I think that as the season goes on, the rapport with him and Josh Rosen will only get better, and this guy is going to have some games where he goes off, even though Miami is going to be, like, blown out yet again. But really like Preston Williams as an opportunity for you moving forward if you need an extra receiver spot on your team. So let's talk about the tricks in the waiver wires. And once again, this first player, it goes back to my rule of, like, can't trust Patriots running backs, and that is Rex Burkhead. So a good game from Rex Burkhead. He had 11 carries, 47 yards, and a touchdown. He also had 6 catches for 22 yards, which is definitely more of his forte. He's more of a pass-catching running back, kind of like James White. But the thing with Rex Burkhead is you have to understand that James White didn't play. So, like, his numbers are not going to be that high on a consistent basis, but Burkhead is a solid play because you know that he is going to give you that PPR value if you're in that type of format. He's going to usually come in on probably about a third of the plays, catch a few passes, like run once or twice. But that is not a guy you want to spend your top waiver priority on because it's going to change as the season goes on. They're going to, like, not have him involved as much as they did in this game. Because frankly, whenever they play Miami, they usually do that, where they put in, like, guys that you least expect because they know that, like, Miami, it's just not worth playing, like, their best players to risk injury, it seems. But I don't even know. So just be careful. Rex Burkhead may be a good stream if James White has to miss another game, but I wouldn't waste a top priority on it. My second trick is Taylor Gabriel. I don't know what happened in that game, man. Like, he was awful in week 1 and 2. I was saying he was a drop candidate. So a lot of people probably did drop him anyway. Not because of me, but just because of how bad he was. And then this game, like, 6 catches, 75 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then he off of 7 targets. So he's tied for the team lead in targets. But, like, the Bears, like, offense, like, I don't think you could trust that offense moving forward. Like, they nearly, like, blew a lead to the Redskins, if not for just absolutely horrendous, like 2-point conversion management. That contributing to that among other problems. But like the Bears are gonna like mix around different speedy players because Matt Nagy is trying to blend in different guys. They don't have anybody that stands out, so they're going with like a bunch of different plays that use different players every week. And I think that Taylor Gabriel, a guy that like had a really good game, and I just don't see this replicating like ever again this season. So, and I just don't. I personally don't see that as something that I would waste my time with moving forward because I think that like they're gonna get some other guys involved. I think this is just more of like outlier. I want to see more sample size of this from Taylor Gabriel to really start trusting him as a receiver that I want to roster on my team. So my third trick is Jordan Akins. So Jordan Akins, he had a good game. Had 3 catches for 73 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that was actually like it's a really like. So a lot of people are like pretty high on him right now because like. If you're short on tight ends, like let's say you're starting like O.J. Howard or like you bought into the Hawkinson hype and now you're hurting from that. Like Akins is an attractive option, but then again, like I think that like this game, like the red zone target is DeAndre Hopkins, and I think that's going to stay that way. Like, I just think that, like, this is another game where, like, I want to see more from Akins because they have another guy like named Khalil Waring who was the tight end that they drafted this year. I think he might get more red zone looks later on, too. So, I don't see it, but I do think it's something that I would keep an eye on moving forward because any tight end that gives you that type of numbers is somebody to at least keep an eye on, especially with how tight ends are. Other guys that I don't like, Ronald Jones. I think that Ronald Jones seems to be gaining momentum in that backfield, but the problem with him is that like he is still like relatively evenly splitting the touches with Peyton Barber. There's other games where Peyton Barber, like the against the Panthers, where he got like 80% of the carries. So Ronald Jones, like I see as somebody that it's worth stashing him because he could emerge into that number 1 role in the backfield, but it's looking like just the way that Bruce Arians is running that team that they're just going to go committee. And I think you just got to understand that with him and not take Ronald Jones over somebody like Tony Pollard who could have more long-term value to you on an offense that's generally going to go one running back at a time. Even if Tony Pollard doesn't play, anything happens to Zeke, he has no competition compared to Ronald Jones, who's just going to be fighting off Peyton Barber and Darian Gumbawale the whole season, it seems. Another trick, Paul Richardson, he did have a good game. He's playing the Bears, and he was the best receiver for the Redskins in this game. 8 catches, 83 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. But, is this sustainable moving forward? And I think that, I still don't see it. I think that Terry McLaurin is the one that is stepping up as the wide receiver 1. He had a good game in this game as well. I think that Richardson just got more looks on this team just based on the way the game was scripted. In fact, they were behind by so much. So I would be very cautious with Paul Richardson, but he's somebody that is an interesting stash on your bench just to see how things develop over the next few weeks. They're playing the Giants next week, which is a bad defense. That game will probably be a shootout. So speaking of the Giants, my last trick that I want to talk about is Daniel Jones. And I'm not saying Daniel Jones is somebody that I would not start for this week because he's got an excellent matchup, and I'm going to list him as one of my streams actually in a minute for QBs. But, a lot of this, the reason the game was this way is because, they fell behind. They're having to throw a lot to catch themselves back up into the game. So he had 380 yards, 3 touchdowns. He ran for score. So he's a guy that yes, I think he is a good stash at quarterback, but he's the guy getting all the hype right now because of taking over Eli. But do not take Daniel Jones over Wayne Gallman is what I'm saying. A lot of people do that because they think that they need a quarterback because they're relying on Cam Newton. or like they had Big Ben or something. But like you want that running back more than you want Daniel Jones. So I'm just putting him mostly in my tricks because like don't waste your top priority on Daniel Jones, but he is a guy that like after the waivers clear or maybe as your third option or something like that, pick up Daniel Jones and could be a good stream for this week if you're going the QB stream game. But Wayne Gallman is the giant to pick up this week is basically what I'm saying. So, got a few minutes left on this video. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the streams that I like for this week at each of the positions. So we'll go into that. So the quarterbacks, again, Daniel Jones, I already mentioned him. I just talked about him. Great match against the Redskins. Just look at what they made Mitch Trubisky look like Tom Brady. Like, that man, we're such a bad team right now. I'm so like frustrated with my team, but I don't even know. But then on the opposite end, like Case Keenum, I think that could be a good stream as well going up against the Giants. They have not been making quarterbacks look good either. Or I mean, they've been making quarterbacks look good on their end as well. I think this game could be a shootout. So I think Case Keenum is going to have a lot of opportunity in this game, as well as some guys like Terry McLaurin who are good streams as well in that position. And by the way, these streams, I'm talking about guys that are like generally like 50 to 60% owned, so they're probably on waivers in your league. To keep an eye out for these guys. Andy Dalton, you know, he's had up and down games this year, but he's got the Pittsburgh Steelers in this game, which have generally not been a good pass defense. I like Andy Dalton to step up against Pittsburgh. Just keep in mind that there is risk in that because that divisional rivalry especially just ends up being a bloodbath where it's just like a defensive battle. And so I think Dalton is a risky play, but he's something to keep an eye on because just based on the way the Steelers' trends have been so far this season. And then another good stream option, Kyle Allen, Carolina Panthers. He's going up against the Houston Texans this week. So if Cam Newton misses another game, this is a good opportunity for Kyle Allen to potentially repeat that game that he had last week. But again, not a guy that I would waste a top priority on. Just kind of see like how things develop with that Cam Newton situation. Running backs. So one of the top running back streams that I like for this week, who's getting dropped in a lot of leagues, is Justin Jackson. So I think what's going to happen in this game is that like the Chargers are going to go up to a huge lead on the Dolphins, and then kind of like what happened with Tony Pollard, like they're not going to put Austin Eckler out there for all the plays, so they're going to use Justin Jackson more. And I think that's when he goes hog wild and rushes for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, something to that effect. And I think Justin Jackson is going to be the benefactor of that. He's going to explode this week. So I really like him if you're in a pinch, you're looking for a home run. Justin Jackson, even though he's not had great games so far this season, he's been modest, but good opportunity for him to really step up and give you a lot of points this week. Another guy, Darrell Williams, and this is going to be dependent on like what happens with LaShawn McCoy if he's able to play, or maybe even Damian Williams. But if both of them are out, like Darrell Williams, another great pickup because the Lions' run defense has not been very good, and this is a good opportunity for him again to repeat the numbers that he had last week. And then my other running back streams that I like going up against the Giants. And Wayne Gallman, a good stream as well, but I already talked about him earlier. But Chris Thompson, Adrian Peterson. Chris Thompson, for the most part, is getting owned in a lot of leagues, but Adrian Peterson still out there in some leagues. So both of them have very good matchup opportunity against the Giants, which are not a good defense. I think that they both, I would feel comfortable starting in this game with not like the expectation that they'll explode, but at least that they'll give me a good floor value to work with. Wide receivers. So I like Randall Cobb this week. Playing New Orleans, I think he has a bounce back game. I think part of the problem with playing Miami is that like they got ahead by so much they started running the ball more. I think that hurt Cobb in this last game, but he will be back on track. The Giants receivers, the one I like that's standing out is Darius Slayton. He's a rookie out of Auburn. He's kind of on that same timeline as Daniel Jones. I think he is actually a guy that I'd like to emerge as the season goes on. The only reason I don't make him a top ad is because I still want to see more like sample from him. But he's a good stream this week against a bad Redskins defense. So is Bennie Fowler of the Giants as well. Geronimo Allison has a good matchup playing the Eagles this week. They're the Geronimo Allison of the Packers. But it seems like with him and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, they're like trading off between good games and bad games. So like I'm nervous about it, but like it could actually be a good stream if you're looking for a home run because the Eagles have struggled in pass defense. And then another guy, Trey Quinn of the Washington Redskins, going up against the Giants, like I don't know how well Case Keenum is going to be able to like stay in the pocket for how long, but he could be dumping it off a lot to Trey Quinn. So so first of all, like Terry McLaurin, I would start this week. Paul Richardson maybe, and then Trey Quinn I would actually start with more confidence than Paul Richardson because Trey Quinn, a slot guy in PPR, he's going to catch a lot of passes, give you a lot of points. All right, so tight ends. So first of all, like Will Disley is still 45% owned. If he is in your league, like pick him up, man, because like there is he's getting so much volume in from Russell Wilson. It's looking like he's going to be their tight end one and almost turning into a weekly starter, which was my key point from them in this past week. So yeah, so get him first of all. Another one I like, Vernon Davis, still operating without Jordan Reed, and they get the Giants, so I think he has a good chance for a good game. Another ones that I like are Ebron and Doyle, and I talked about how I didn't like them last week, but I like them more this week because I think that both of them actually get more targets potentially with T.Y. Hilton out. But, be cautious, though. I want to see exactly how things develop on this team without T.Y. Hilton under Jacoby Brissett. And then T.J. Hawkinson, I like to have a bounce-back game. The Lions are playing the Chiefs, and I think that he's going to get more opportunity than he's had in these last few games to kind of get down the field, maybe get you a touchdown. Defensive streams I like. So these guys are probably not owned, but or probably not on waivers. But if you own the Chargers, you should be rejoicing because they're playing Miami this week. So if somebody dropped them for some reason going up against the Texans, then that's a top ad for me. And then other defenses I like, Seattle going against Arizona because they are committing a lot of turnovers. Could be a good opportunity for pick six, but then again, risky play though if you do that. And then Pittsburgh against Cincinnati, again another team that's turning it over a lot, giving up a lot of sacks. So I think that Pittsburgh, could be a good defense. And then another one that I like who's still on waivers for the most part is the Green Bay Packers because all of the Thursday night games that we've had so far have been relatively low-scoring games, and I think that's because the teams have a shorter week to kind of prepare for their opponent. So Green Bay, who's already played a Thursday night game, they shut down the Bears. This week they're playing the Eagles, which their offense is looking worse over the last few weeks. I think the Packers could actually surprise a lot of people to have a very good defensive effort against the Eagles this week. And then finally, kickers. It's hard to stream kickers, but in general, what I do is I look at the offense and the opponent that they're playing and the likelihood to get touchdowns, get down the field. And then, if that team also, the defense has, some solid rush defense or the offense doesn't have a lot of red zone targets, those are good kickers. So the ones I like for this week that kind of fit that bill, Jason Myers going up against Arizona, plays for the Seahawks, and then Joey Sly of the Carolina Panthers, who's playing the Houston Texans. So that's all I got for this video. Let me know what questions you have about starts and sits, and next video I'm going to do some trades, and then I'm going to do a start-sit before game day. And so let me know what you think, and thanks for watching, guys. See ya. Bye.